think about a memory of something so beautiful and brutal. It fades over time, like human bodies decay. Lose shape and connection. That's why we create something. By taking photos, writing music, drawing, or using a voice. To communicate with the moment arrived. Art holds this moment. There are no boundaries of time. It stays. We met these artists and made this snapshot of nature. We may find the answer to why we create.
Sebastian Melmoth started out as an excuse to play music and get drunk with a very good friend of mine called Madame Pause. Her and I, we worked together, played guitars and wrote songs, and at the beginning it was just an attempt to create something without any preconditioned forethought as to where it's going to go and what the musical and lyrical content would be. We would just play what we felt was the correct thing to play, and it turned out, as some people describe it, an acoustic sonic cue. Other than it being quite an obscure reference that not many people are aware of, I also saw it as a pretty good way of appropriating an alias that would be representative of a dead poet. Essentially, Sebastian Melmoth is a vehicle for disseminating poetry in a way which people readily accept, as opposed to just turn away from. It's not so highbrow. So yeah, dead walking poet, reciting poetry, obscure reference, hoping people would read into it and maybe learn a little bit more if they choose to do that. We played open mic nights around London, getting our experience performing in front of our live audience, which is very good. Sometimes it was very bad. a couple of years before that, we tried to we tried our best with other band members, but it never really shot off because we were all quite young, not knowing where to go. Everything up until that point was done in a Korg 4-track tape recorder, which had a really low fidelity thing about it, and they weren't great quality demos, but our friend saw the gem among the shit pile and picked out the gem and recorded it. And from there we had an album called Insanity's Insanity, which is what I would consider a sort of best of compilation of all the half-decent songs that we'd done, written up until that point, which was about a give or take 3-year period.
Sitting in my room and I was dreaming out the roots of fantasy. As the adrenaline rushed through my body, I welcomed the white noise. I contemplated pleasant things like rape, murder and sodomy. Skalnikov couldn't deal with it, but maybe I can. Maybe I'm superior to him. I live in a fictitious world and I'm fond of fabrication. Reality's too much for me and I just can't cope with it anymore.
It is a bit of both. Yes, the lyrics are brutal in some cases, and I wouldn't just say that it's confined to Insanity's Insanity. I think they've been getting progressively more brutal, but I haven't revisited that album in a while. On the first hand, it's good to be shocking. It's good to have something that people can double take and read into, because I've always found that lyrics in music and pop music, rock music are always subservient to the melody, and they're not really, oftentimes they're not about anything. So yes, they're fictitious, they're little fictions. I have to admit that I have relatively short attention span, so I've always wanted to write a novel or something like that, but I've always found it easiest to confine an idea to 4 or 5 stanzas and leave something else to the imagination. So you give just hints of a narrative and allow the audience to pick up on that and explore it for themselves. But of course it all does come from within me, and sometimes it's a bit scary. Find, like, you know, writing it down, getting up one morning, writing it all down because you've got a creative spurt, and and then reading it back and thinking, well, where did that come from? But at least it allows me to I can write these things down and not go ahead and psych out on people and do whatever it is that I describe. Next thing we did was decided to start a band properly, in the sense that this is working. Why don't we try and give it a bit more depth? So Scrappy 2 joined our entourage, and we decided to structure it conceptually. We had a drum machine thing going, bass player finally electrified our guitars, and it all ended up sounding pretty good. From there we had an EP as a result of that process. We wrote, churned out a few songs, and the result was this Indertifa EP, which is a conceptual mini-album chronicling attempting to answer the question of what happens once someone decides to take drugs to open up their mind, and how far can they possibly go deep into the psyche, into the depths. Indertifa is taken from a Fritz Lang movie, Metropolis. The phrase gets passed around. Against the asphalt, they come back to me as terrible thoughts. The heart beats, but my nerves like the man trees more, writing the chorus of perpetual tar. Paths and means to do it again. Trying twice as hard to get to the end. Into nothing at all. Eating choose and turning slow. Hey, well, I still something. No, it's nothing at all. Drugs certainly can be used as a tool. However, I found that for myself personally, drugs are a hindrance to the creative process. I much prefer having a clear mind, or at least a clear approach to what I'm doing. In essence, that the creative act is in a way transcendental anyway. You often stop associating yourself with the immediate reality, and you get drawn into something which is very special, and it could be a short burst of about 5 minutes, or it could be a more prolonged period. Drugs are similar in that effect, as in they let you explore the inner workings of your psyche and whatever else may be going on, and they can be used as tools for opening certain doors of perception. The problem is that if you do too much, those doors may be left unhinged, and that can be detrimental to your everyday experience. So that is, in essence, what we were trying to explore there. And yes, I have used drugs, and yes, I've probably taken too many drugs at some stage, at one stage or another, but it doesn't help with it every day, and I wouldn't recommend it. Not as a crutch, anyway.
That's fair enough.
Feline Vomitus is an art group that puts out multidisciplinary projects, be they music, film, video, performances, or publications. Everything is done under the Feline Vomitus imprint, and the underlying methodology behind it all is that as many people can be involved in it as is required, as long as they forfeit their identity. So everyone who's involved is anonymous, essentially.
I hope to fare better.
gratification was rudely talked about. Corridor. The front door locked behind us with a click. We went through into the explosion. Right out of my chest and into the muesli. My heart, too patriotic for the ideologies of its new owners, but its reinforced foundations ensured many a true expression. She does look familiar. Let us partake in this stalking evil deed. Follow. Maybe I can get lucky on her fine day, and she'll not go stooping as low as Eric Gill, the mason and serial typographer. Having been born addicted, he was finding himself drawn to dark liquids from a young age. White, oxidant alcoholics waited dauntlessly for Good Friday to tear its mustard skin. Interior. Inspired by William Burroughs' seminal work, The Naked Lunch, I cut up every single line of all the poems and short stories that were going to be compiled in this volume. Each line I cut out, I put it in the bag, shook the bag around, and got a massive scroll of paper which I cut from about I don't know, 4 A1 sheets, sellotaped together, fed them through a typewriter, and in as few sessions as possible, I think it was about 2 or 3 sessions in total, I picked out line by line whatever was in the bag, typed it up, and left it pretty much as fragmented as the process allowed it to be. There was a certain narrative that compiled all of the fragments together, and it ended up being a semi-epic prose poem about a Bonnie and Clyde sort of couple who go on a road trip, kill people, and fuck waitresses and stuff like that. And 7, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 7 plus 2. Never, 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 never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind what?
Never mind everything.
What?
Why not?
Love everything.
Love everything but nothing itself. Inside the coconut that counts, they tell me. Melmoth was always, in my mind, a vehicle for music. Long ago, considered that everything that is done musically will be under the Sebastian Melmoth umbrella, no matter how much it deviates stylistically from the starting point. I always found that bands who deviate and change around their the way they do things are always more interesting. Radiohead is quite an obvious example. Every album is slightly different and progressively more boring, exactly. But yeah, Feline Vomitus Feline Vomitus came about slightly later. It just stated it's primarily a multimedia project, and it can encompass music, but probably what would be considered sound arts as opposed to pop music. I consider Sebastian Melmoth as pop music, absolutely. We even derived a subgenre for ourselves, which is hypnotic anti-pop, because in my mind that best describes what we do. We're not quite psychedelic, we're not quite post-punk or whatever. Giving people a label is people expect a label from you. So that's what we did. We gave them a label back, which doesn't pigeonhole us in any way other than what we've ascribed for ourselves. So it's hypnotic because it's repetitive and gets you into a groove, but it's also dark, and that's where the anti-pop bit comes in. It's not that we're against pop, but it's the antithesis of pop music. It is catchy, but it's pop music with depth. Worked for about a year and a half, writing and putting together an album called The Nausea of Being. That album title is taken from, is borrowed from the idea, Jean-Paul Sartre's idea, that living in essence is a nauseating experience if one is to experience living in its totality. the song themes stretch over many different topics, including murder in the family and politics, well, the political situation as it currently stands, or as we currently perceive it to be. But essentially what this album represents is a search for God. I was looking for God, I did not find God. This is the result. Yes, we do attack God, but we attack the institutions which dogmatize and capitalize. Well, organized religion, yeah, which capitalizes on the idea of God, forcing people to be subservient, forcing them to stop asking questions. And all we have to do is, well, it's our duty to continue asking questions in order to facilitate happiness. It's a gradual progression. I see the album as a sort of a rejection of God in a way to begin with, a rejection of established ideologies within society, intrinsic within society, and a progression into the inner workings of the self, explorations of the self, and that's why the album ends on such a destructive, on the destructive epilogue.
I think you could see the last track, God Be Shadow, in many ways. You could see it as actual destruction of the universe or anything, or you could see it as an uplifting, mind-altering spiritual experience, which you can relate to a kind of God.
Yeah. God Miché is both of those things. It is a reflection on the destructive forces of the universe, but it also transcendental experience. And that comes from personally what happened to me around that time, and that was a way of working through that. But listening back to it, it suggests other things. It's reminiscent of a resonance of this frequency that is apparent all around it. You just tune out all the other sounds that are happening. There'll be something going on anyway. So that is a sort of, I used an artistic license to try and illustrate a narrow and uncertain pathway into the unknown. Quite negatively to the extremities of Sebastian Melmoth, partly because we're to extreme and deal with issues that many people would probably find uncomfortable and wouldn't expect to come out of pop. That's it. That is exactly the edge that we're trying to step over. It's something that's missing in this relatively ubiquitous art form. Music is everywhere, and yet, and it has the opportunity to reach a lot of people in lots of different ways, and yet there's still a lot of topics that are left untouched, and that's unfortunate because it's a powerful medium, and that's what we try to do.
So do you kind of agree with Eminem when he says that as well? If I was writing a script for a film, people would accept it in a film, but they don't accept it in a song.
I would agree with Eminem. In fact, Eminem is one of the first musicians that I really got into and understood. I was really young when I first heard him, about 9 years old, and I guess that, a bit of, you know, like Marilyn Manson, all that sort of stuff. They're dark and subversive, and they're artists who sing about interesting topics, explore interesting topics. And yes, with cinema and television, it's a lot. For some reason, it's a lot easier to objectify violence and sex, and for some reason, people are desensitized to it when it is in a visual format. Partly because it's so common, I guess, but I think music, it has the potential to. Music is a much more emotive medium, and if it affects you emotionally, then it's something that's, on the one hand, difficult to control, and also maybe difficult to come to terms with and accept.
Sebastian Melmoth is dead.